Hello and welcome everyone to the Inner Scorecard podcast. Today we have a really special conversation. This is for people who struggle to articulate their thoughts and communicate with their leaders, with their managers on why they deserve this promotion or talk to recruiters on why they deserve a hike. They struggle in explanation of their thoughts. This guy, Jason Yoong, he writes a newsletter which is read by hundreds and thousands of LinkedIn members every month. He works with top executives, top directors, he coaches them, and this conversation will help you break down the mindset of these people and how these techniques work. So Jason Yoong is an Amazon veteran. He spent a couple of years in startups and then spent years on Level Up, writing the newsletter and coaching and developing those leaders. In today's conversation, we talk about how to become visible in front of leaders, how people like ICs and lower level managers can become more important in their day-to-day role. We spoke about his angel investing and how he invests in ideas, people, and team. We also spoke about how to reach out to those people who are level above you. How do you collaborate with them? How do you network with them? And that's something I was personally very interested in. And we spoke about how to be relentlessly resourceful. That one skill that will change your complete career trajectory. But before we go into today's conversation, I just wanted to say that 99% of my viewers are not subscribed. Your subscription means a lot to this channel. It helps me find these guests and have these amazing conversations that are useful to hundreds of people. Thank you so much. Now let's get into today's conversation. How long, Jason, have you been at Level Up now?
Almost 3 years. Yeah, because I was still at the startup when she was born, because the day that she was born was when our TechCrunch funding announcement was launched. I think within like 30 minutes of each other.
Oh,
I
wow.
remember that very clearly. Yeah, it was a wild time. Interesting to do a startup while you have a kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I genuinely wanted to do this conversation because I was so interested in your career path and the switches you've made. I think I could gather from other conversations that you had on other podcasts some of the details. But could you give the audience like a brief about who you are and what do you do?
Sure, yeah. And if you want to spend the entire time just talking about how special I am, I'm good. I'm good with that too. I joke. I'll go quickly in chronological order because I think it tells a good path story. I always like to tell people this. When I was in college and when I was in high school and college, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and career. So I did 7 different internships, from marketing, accounting, finance, PR, sales, etc., to find out firsthand through osmosis what I was, number one, what I was good at, and number two, what I liked. So, long story short, it's interesting because I was planning to do law in college, but I obviously did not become a lawyer. So after I graduated, I went into digital media and marketing, the advertising field, um, and then spent about 7 years of my career there. Went from assistant media planner to VP in about 7 years. So managing 0 people to managing a larger org, P&L ownership, hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing budget. And then after that, I went to Amazon on the business development team for Marketplace, then pivoted to a voice of the seller type of role. And interestingly, I thought I was going to end my career at Amazon because I enjoyed the company. I really liked it. Super smart people, big, tough puzzles to solve, very customer obsessed company, which was close to me. But then I decided to do a cliff jump for many reasons we could go into, but joined the founding team of a software startup. We raised $8 million on a PowerPoint deck. It was a wild roller coaster ride. And then after that, in deciding what I wanted to do, I just kind of stumbled into Level Up with Ethan. So the short story there is I'm the co-founder and COO of Level Up with Ethan, and we help people make career breakthroughs, whether it's through our newsletter and content, our leadership community, our courses, executive coaching, speaking, all of that stuff. Any way that we can help and pay it forward.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think lots of interesting bits to go deeper into. Talk to me about the switch from Amazon. I think you said that Amazon was probably your retirement plan in a way that you could see yourself long term there, and you switched. And you also mentioned earlier that you've always been somebody who's, or maybe early or in the formative years of your life, you were not so sure on what you want to do in your life, and you were trying out, dabbling out different things. Did that change as you grew older? And like, talk to me about what skills or what culture kind of made you understand that, yeah, these are the things I definitely pick up, because that's something I share myself. Is I went to the army, I was an operations manager at Amazon,
Wow.
switched to science at Amazon. So, but I really see, like, if somebody asks me, oh, this seems like such a career shift, I'm like, yeah, it might seem like that externally, but internally the same things apply to all these philosophies, like breaking a problem, solving it logically. Talk to me about your discovery of, going from this hybrid personality to like honing into a few areas.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll probably be the first to tell you that I don't think there is a formula, nor do I have such a formula. But here's a few things that I know that are true. So, uh, the principles in terms of traits that will work regardless of domain, role, or field is going to be high extreme ownership in whatever you do, uh, a high index towards bias for action,
Mhm.
being relentlessly resourceful. I think is an underrated trait and is something that I really look for in up and coming talent or future partners. Um, and then
Explain
the
explain that more, Jason. The being, I think that's a very important point. I want to double click on that. Like, tell me, what does it mean to be very resourceful?
Yeah, it's relentlessly resourceful is probably my two favorite combined words. I have a lot of other favorite words or phrases, but that in other words, it's basically you get shit done without anyone's permission. You don't wait to be told what to do. You don't wait to be given a playbook or a list of to-dos. You figure out, you get a problem, and you go about figuring it out. A lot of what happens in that is self-learning. So people, especially younger up and coming talent who impress me a lot, are the ones who self-learn on YouTube or self-learn on podcasts and newsletters and say, look, this is the problem that my customer or users are facing. And this is just how I thought about going about solving it. Whether it's building something, selling something, shipping something. And then they just quickly get feedback. And that's how they optimize and iterate the product.
Hmm.
It's a lot of
So,
self-starting.
right, like completely entrepreneurial. Like, you don't need to be told,
Yes.
handheld, even at junior roles. So that's the skill people mostly assume that you acquire kind of as you get more seniority. But you're saying that could also be just a personality trait that, I like solving problems, and I don't need clues as much, and I
Yeah.
just like to solve puzzles.
It's you always think like a founder, and I actually, rather than the term founder, I like to use the words always think like a small business owner.
Mhm.
Because everyone starts out as a small business, and I have a soft spot for many small businesses. Here's a good test. I heard this somewhere before, and I think it might have been an interview question at one of the big companies. But say you own a grocery store. You are the owner of a grocery store, and then you wake up at 5 a.m. and you find out that the refrigerator section is broken.
Uh-huh.
What do? Now, someone with who's none of those positive traits, sometimes they'll say, "Oh, I'm going to call this person to do it. I'm going to look at what's happening. I'm going to see what's damaged. Maybe I'll call XYZ employees." That's what you
Right.
don't want to hear. The answer you want to hear is one simple thing. I'm going to drive down to my grocery store, look at the broken refrigerator, and fix it. That's it. And then, once you face the problem head on, then you start to uncover all the solutions.
Right.
But that's the type of person you want. Yeah.
No. Yeah, no, and definitely. So I think we can carry on with the earlier part where you were saying these are some of the skills that you look for. And so these are the skills that you figured out that are very core to you. You're also good at those. And they were the kind of uh the fabric that tied all these different roles that you were trying early
Yeah,
in your career.
so it's okay. So when you are relentlessly resourceful and you you immerse yourself firsthand through osmosis in solving problems, then you start to develop judgment and experience. The only way to develop judgment is not by reading books and theory. It's by doing it firsthand. And judgment, strong judgment, being right a lot, is what elevates you to senior executive levels, right? That's one component. The other component is developing early on the mental model that good work and strong results are table stakes and are not enough. You need to be able to effectively communicate those results, as some people call this visibility,
Right.
upwards and to the relevant key stakeholders. And they could be customers, they could be investors, they couldn't be employees, they could be peers, executives, etc. But you need to be able to communicate not only your work. This is where most people who see it in a negative light get wrong. It's not just about you.
Right.
If you want to be a big leader, and you could do it as an IC or manager, you have to elevate the work of others.
Mhm.
That's the only way you're going to scale and deliver big things. Is usually as a team with different people, right? So knowing how to effectively do that and bring visibility to the project, to the work, to the results, and others is a critical skill. And I think I learned that because I had good mentors and managers early on where I saw that. Yeah.
How do ICs elevate others? Like that's an interesting point, because I personally felt that yes, like you can mentor, but especially when you start becoming senior. But tell me about early on in your career, is that also an opportunity where you can elevate others? Talk to me more about that. That's I think a different opinion I've heard from you.
Yeah. When you look at the web of network of an IC, because very, very, very seldomly is it just completely solo. So elevating others. Who are the others in this bucket? Number one, it's your peer group of ICs, right? Whether those are in people in different domains. It could be customer service, marketing, sales, eng, product, ops, design, different stakeholders who are also ICs. Also your manager is one. If you could, anytime you could create a win-win where what your manager does well looks good on you and vice versa, you're gonna, you're both riding the right rocket ship or plane in the same direction.
Right.
The other is mentoring younger talent. So it could be interns, it could be new employees who are onboarding, it could be 1 or 2 levels below you who want to get to your level. That's a developing talent trait, right? Those are the 3 immediate ones I would focus if I was an IC in my realm. And then the others are the executives as well. One key is being able to pinpoint where you see technology trends or customers going, but is new, and thus the senior executives don't have the experience or playbook to tell you what to do. And instead they're looking for you. More like on the ground, in the trenches, closer to the customers. Hey, this type of tool is very popular for our customers. We don't offer that yet. Here's a solution, right? Specifically for those earlier and mid in their careers, that's how you could get on the radar of many senior executives. Yeah. One thing that I did, this was early 2010 when I was still on the media agency side, was we were spending tens of millions, hundreds of millions of advertising dollars digital. And the most popular platforms at the time were the social and video. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all those. But what a lot of people overlooked was e-commerce and Amazon.com. Amazon advertised specifically, right? A lot of people still shopped on Amazon, but a lot of people were like, what's Amazon advertising? And then you peel back the onion and say, well, the growth rate is this, the adoption is this. Amazon has proprietary data on purchasing habits, so you could retarget more effectively, things like that, right? And then you could attribute the final sale conversion better. So you see this big wave that you're like, okay, well, in 10 years, do you think this will be big? The short answer was yes. And then a lot of people were not paying attention to it. So people were zigging, and then I decided to zag.
Yeah.
And then I became a domain expert in that field. So anytime one of the senior leaders and executives had questions about e-commerce or Amazon advertising, I became the go-to person. And I knew far more than any of them. And then this is where you not only start to share data and insights, but then you have to share your judgment and point of view. What happens if we transfer 25, 30, 50 million dollars from this bucket to this bucket?
Right.
You know, what does that deal look like? What does that contract look like, et cetera? Yeah.
No, that's really interesting, and I think that totally makes sense. I myself, I feel that like even working at Amazon, I got siloed into supply chain, and working in supply chain, I just thought I understood everything. But actually, when I started helping my uncle who was selling on Amazon, I learned so much more about how to sell, how to do not sell like in the sense of sales, but more like how the processes work end to end. And it was incredible, like to learn all of that. Talk to me, Jason, about your switch from Amazon. Like, how was that the switch that you made, especially when you were liking the company and you were very comfortable? How did that switch to a startup happen? And it sounded like a pretty like a roller coaster ride, as you say. How was that switch?
Yeah, it was not in the cards, nor in the stars, I will say. Um, Before I cover that, to close on the career advice topic, because I think this is important. Ethan talks a lot about being a change agent, and that's what change agents do. They find new business opportunities or they find new ways to increase the existing business, right? Um, Another mental model that I like to tell people is either you get close to where the revenue and business impact really is, or if not, your whatever you do has to impact it in a way so that you could attribute it back to you. Because executives in the C-suite largely speak in that language, right? So, do those two things. Okay, to your question on the decision, because I get asked this a lot. Why would you leave a big FANG company who's growing and doing well, and you like it there for a crazy startup? Okay, so a few crazy reasons. I'll try to remember them in order, but I might get them mixed up. Number one, uh, throughout my career, by this time, I was already advising, mentoring, and angel investing in startups. So
Mhm.
I've had affinity for early stage founders, and I've always been interested in it. But I've never operated at an early stage startup, so it's always been of interest. Number two, the founding team we had was 11 out of 10. Extremely talented, uh, very ambitious and go-getter. And also, our CEO and CTO had the track record of having their previous startups been acquired. This was multiple startups. So they had that already. And they already had the investor relationship. So raising the money was not a problem for us. The other thing is I knew the CEO well because his former startup went through the Techstars Alexa Accelerator. And I was a mentor for Alexa Accelerator. And they chose me as one of their co-lead mentors. And we got to know each other well. And we jived really well. Which, similar to me and Evan, we just jive personality and mental models and mission of life well, which we could talk about later. So that helps. Um, Strong team, existing credibility, strong relationships, uh, talented team, always been interested in it. Um, the other thought was I spoke to many of my mentors and friends,
Mhm.
and the resounding piece was use Jeff Bezos's regret minimization framework. So, would you regret not doing this when you're 80 years old? The answer was yes, because you got to try, right? Um, the other one was I have a someone close to me took his company IPO around that time. And I got to see that entire journey from co-founder to IPO. And I mean, you want to experience that for yourself. And then a lot of my other more business corporate mentors, they told me, look, back in my day, if you were to do a startup or entrepreneur endeavor and it failed, it would look kind of bad. Like people would be like, why? But nowadays, it's why aren't you doing that?
Right.
Because people want chaos experience. People want to see founder type of responsibilities, and those are transferable anywhere. Um,
Right.
and sometimes if you stay too long at a big company, they might ask you, like, are you just stalled and complacent? And I wasn't at that time. So I wanted to experience both. So when you mash all that together, I said, let's go for it. Now's the time. Yeah.
That's really cool. And talk to me more about angel investing. Like, is that something? Uh, I'm curious. Like, I think in this case particularly, you had worked with them, so you kind of knew them, their business model, and the people who were working there. But I think you've said that you have also angel invested in other companies. How do you go about the process? Like, it's almost like speed dating. Like you would want to read through something, and you'd be like, yeah, these people look like solid, and then you do more due diligence on them. And talk to me about the process, like you've used, or I'm very curious to know, like how does one angel invest?
Yeah, there's largely three buckets that I do it in. Bucket one is if I know the founder personally and deeply, and I believe in them. Like this founder is irrational and cannot live if they don't see this product or service or company in the world. That's good. And they have the talent, right? So I bet on individual founders that way. Um, the other methods I've done it is as a LP in funds, where the managing director or founder of that fund is someone that I look up to, someone that maybe has a popular podcast, and I got in because I believe in their thesis, I believe in their track record. So that's one. But that one's very passive. You're just giving them capital.
Yeah,
You sit back.
right.
Sometimes occasionally you get investor updates and you can help if they need it. And then the other one is through syndicates, like AngelList, right? By Naval. Like that's a good platform. But again, you're not just doing it blindly. You're finding the syndicate leads who you align with. So for me, I like to stay in my domain of knowledge, which is mostly e-commerce, digital advertising, marketplaces, sometimes B2B software if it dive into those others. But for example, healthcare, I can't help. So I don't even know how to do diligence and what's good.
Right.
Now, if someone I really respect and another strong investor says, hey, I invested personally into this company and I really recommend it, I will give it a second thought. There's a saying with investors is because sometimes a lot of people ask, can you recommend or refer me to this investor? Well, it's like, okay, if you got an email from a fellow investor and they said, hey, take a look at this founder, what is your first question to that investor?
Right.
And then your question is, how much did you invest?
Right.
Because if they did, okay, great. Then they believe in it. Skin in the game, right? But if they didn't, then you're asking, well, why are you passing me the ball?
Right.
So that network is very strong. That's how I look into it. And, it depends. When you're very early stages, it's no metrics. It's about the team and and what you believe they could do. And the TAM, right? TAM is hard, total addressable market, because sometimes there's an existing TAM, but sometimes this founder and company will create a completely new TAM. So that's why it goes back to, that famous question, what are you going to choose? TAM, market, or market, product, or team? For me, it's always team and market. Because good teams will always find a way to figure it out. Now, they might end up pivoting the company and start a new one. But at the same time, a big market with a big wave like AI now is just going to rise all boats, most boats, let's put it.
Right.
So if you could get the two, if you could get the right founder and team working in the right market, that's when you get it, the big returns. But that's how I do diligence. Yeah. You have to be,
I'm curious, when do you know when to pull out? Like that's the other part, is like when you figure out, because that's the same in investing. I do mostly like value investing, and like I think I follow a lot of Buffett and Mungerisms, wherein they're like, if you're withdrawing money, that means you made a bad call. So basically, their fundamental approach of investing is you put in a company, the stock market closes for like next 5 years, you can't do a trade, you should be fine with that. And I'm just wondering, like, how do you, like, you need to keep track, and you're seeing what they said, are they committing on those promises? And I think with private investing, it's just harder to also take it out, right? Like before IPO.
Yeah, it's the short answer is, so I'm similar to you, where I'm a find great value or companies or people and just invest in the long term and hold. I do that in my public portfolio as well. Um, the snarky answer is, when have I taken out money? It's two things. I never do, or it's because I'm forced to because the company got acquired and they're like, here's this check. And I'm like, oh, okay. I've sometimes you forget that you invest in those companies. But yeah, there's been times, it's hard because sometimes you'll get emails as like, hey, we just raised this other huge round. Does
Right.
anyone want to take some off the table or secondary shares or whatever?
Yeah.
And you look at it and you're like, well, you never want to sell it when you think it's a good thing going and it's a rocket ship, because you're like, well, what if it's like 10x 5 years later or
Right.
100x?
Right.
So, and with angel investing, you're really just playing for the unicorns, the outliers, the
Yeah.
1 in 100, because
Right.
that'll make back your entire investment. So, I do both public and private. But with private, you have to go in with different mental models.
Mhm.
Same thing in terms of holding for the long term, because with angel investing, it's a minimum 7-year hold.
Hmm.
Sometimes with some of these companies staying private for longer, and if you're not big on secondaries, 10 plus years, I would just assume. And the moment you give them money and you send the check, just assume it's gone. So
Yeah.
this used to drive me crazy for about the first maybe like 14, 13 months, as I used to track everything, the dashboards, blah, blah. And you're like, you know what? No. Out of 100, just assume 90 of them bankrupt, out of
Right.
business. 5 maybe just returns your capital, 1x, nothing, right? Then you have 5 left. So let's say 3, maybe like a 2 to 6xer. Okay, fine, whatever, nothing life changing.
Yeah.
And then the remaining like 2 or 1. Okay, maybe that's that. That becomes like your Uber or Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
That's how you got to
And
play
it's a
that game.
completely different monster, right? I think in generally investing, they say like 3 out of 10 decisions is a good hit rate. Like if you get
Oh,
3 decisions out of
excellent.
10. And I think in your case, because it's so much more asymmetric, like it's like probably the payout ratio is like -10 to like 1 million, 1 billion, right? So it's
Yeah, it's a fascinating game. It's
yeah.
especially what is fun is there's the capital potential benefits, but it's also just seeing a lot of the deal flow, the updates. It's a great way to stay on top of what's new and what
Mm.
some of the smartest founders are paying attention to. I always recommend everyone read Roloff Botha's Sequoia memo about the YouTube investment, because that was shared. It's online. You can just Google it, but it's basically what he wrote to convince the investing team that, hey, let's go and invest in YouTube. And you can just see how he breaks it down, right? The TAM, the team, the growth rates, the risks, the challenges, what's going well. And it's just a very good masterclass on how investors can look at problems. But it's not just for investors. It's just broadly speaking, how do you look at a blue ocean opportunity? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
But I'm not an angel investing expert. Otherwise I would do it full time, right? But I'm just very passive with it. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
fun.
no, this is pretty close to what you, I think, are. If I had to, mentally place you, what your interests are, like I think it's everything is around business, right? Like your executive leadership is, these are big leaders in companies that are having a big business impact. Then you're doing, you and Ethan are doing those 1-to-1, and those new leaders are for the business, and then you're investing in those businesses. So I think it's just all tying back to small or big businesses, but just that understanding of how do you break down a problem and how do you execute on it. Um, and coming back to the executive development, talk to me about how it has been for you doing exec development. I think you mentioned that you started that 4 years ago. So, is there certain patterns that somebody earlier in their career could also take away? So rather than waiting, like I think the best analogy right now I could come up with is like, if you want to get therapy, get it when you're 5 year old. So you don't have anything to, to correct later on, but that hardly happens. I'm just wondering, like, what are the learnings that you saw are like consistently applicable, and you see that patterns, no matter what the seniority of that person is, those are those patterns that, we could easily circumvent, and no matter which level you are in right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there, okay, so the keys that I would distill it into is I'll do it in like a reframing type of sense. A lot of people ask the question, how do I get executive visibility?
Mm.
And that is the wrong question to ask. The better question to ask is, how do you become the person who's a magnet for executives to want to sponsor? Right. So then you work back from those inputs and you break it down and you find out, okay, executives like people who bring unique perspectives and insights on something valuable, right? Um, the other thing is executives, sometimes there's a saying like power respects power, but executives want to hear your opinion and point of view and judgment on things. They do not have the answers to everything. Just because their title is VP or SVP or whatever, CXO, doesn't mean they know the answers to everything. They want a thought sparring partner, right?
Mm.
So you could be one of them. And so what comes with that is also the combination of domain expertise into what you're proposing, but also the confidence to say, I believe this is right. At the same time, I'm okay if it's wrong and we will pivot, right?
Right.
Um, the other thing is someone who's very coachable. Because in this dynamic of a relationship, executive and mentee or sponsor and mentee, there is someone at the higher position. And at that person, the executive in this case, is going to be doing a lot of teaching and coaching.
Mm.
So you don't want to be the problem coachee. No one wants that unless your name is Michael Jordan. You're going to score 60 points a game and win a championship, right? So unless you're that, be coachable. What that means is proactively seek candid feedback, show that you want it, show that you're grateful for it, and then close the loop on it.
Mm.
I'm not saying to take every feedback as if it's the gospel and to do it. That's where your judgment comes in. But you're essentially signaling to executive, you gave me this feedback and I thought this part was good and I executed it. This other one, I'm going to do it my own way, etc. Right? They could respect that. The other part is how do you elevate and bring up others? This goes back to the visibility, whether you're an IC or people manager of your stakeholders, your team, or your peers. Because sooner or later, it's interesting. When you're talking to I had a chat with the CEO, and the CEO had a challenge with the CTO because the CTO was kind of a maverick and wanted to do their own things and didn't really like the people management aspect.
Mm.
And then the way the CEO broached it, I thought was very smart because it's very hard to argue with this. So this is what he said. He said, look, you are acting right now as a terrific director of technology.
Mm.
But this company needs you to be a CTO. And with that comes certain responsibilities on the management level because all of your team and org and direct reports are looking at you and how you behave. So you cannot do these certain actions, which just, demoralizes the team, but you have to show it and empower them. And that clicks right through because no one wants, essentially what this person's saying is you're acting at a lower level.
Right.
No one wants to hear that. So it was a very effective, because, sometimes people ask, how do you deal with big ego sometimes? People who have a good track record. That's one way. That's a good way to do it. So this person got it clearly. But those are the components of what makes a good magnet. That's one of the tops. I think people miss out on that a lot because once you get the executive sponsorships, it opens up so many doors, right? You get the champions in the rooms you're not part of.
Right.
You get asked to be on, or maybe voluntold to be on special projects.
Yeah.
And you get a shadow in certain meetings. And honestly, let's be honest. Like, people talk about steamrolling or being a bull in a china shop. Sometimes when you have the backing of certain executives and you need to push your agenda forward, you can say things like, hey, this is critical because of this customer and business need. And also it's a high priority on this executive plate, right?
Mm.
So let's work together to make this a win-win.
Right.
People understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. And also in terms of the way they conduct themselves, like in the executive role, like the amount of stress they have to go with, and I was talking to Ethan in the other day, and it was just the sheer number of hours they would put in, and their peers would be putting in even more. Um, And like I think with Ethan, we were having this discussion as well. Is like, can you have like a great life, great career, great health, and eventually you have to prioritize. So I'm just thinking like, is that also just a sense of clarity that you get earlier on in your career that yeah, this is a path I want to take, and this is why I want to take it, and I'm ready to make sacrifices, or I think you've mentioned also like if your work feels like play, then you're just way ahead of everybody. But work will never feel like play if you're just measuring yourself with external benchmarks or like things
Mm.
that don't really hit core with you. Everybody, wants a promotion, everybody wants a bigger compensation, but are you deserving? Are you like, you making that difference to the business? That's a core realization I see that a lot of people are stuck in at multiple levels. Um, they'd be just unhappy. You
Mm.
just you would see them having a great career, but they're just you know, impossible people to hang out with or have a conversation with. So, like in your experience, like is that a certainty that, people who have risen fast through their careers, they just had to, grunt it out a lot and become like, just not so great personalities.
Okay, so there's a few components to this. The first thing I know, so this question, we're only going to speak about like the outliers. So let's say the top 0.1% of their fields, the people who made the C-suite, the founders who went IPO or got acquired. Um, every top performer, let's use as a catch-all phrase that I know, and this is in business, corporate companies, and other fields like medicine too. Um, they all grinded and worked their butts off.
Right.
That was a prerequisite, right? Some of them, the day after their child was born, they went back to work, either because they had to, or some because I'm just going to be frank, they probably wanted to because they really like it. So that's the prerequisite. Uh, most of them, they're obviously always different personalities in this world, but most of the people that I know in this bucket, they are very intense and they kind of like to always be on, it seems like.
Right.
Because, they're very good at it. It's very fulfilling to them. They add a lot of value to people. So, it's something fun for them, right? So the other part in terms of like personalities, like, yeah, it ranges the spectrum. Some of them are very intense, demanding people that
Yeah.
only a few really like. And then the others are, you wouldn't think it, but they might come across as regular people
Right.
or super happy. Now, the term on balance, balance is more like, I personally don't believe in work-life balance if that's what you're trying to achieve, because it's not, I
Mhm.
haven't seen it's not possible. It's just there's different seasons in your life where you
Right.
index towards different things, right? For a lot of these people, it's work. And then for others, once they achieve some success or, they have a bigger team, etc., then maybe more family if they care about it.
Yeah.
And then usually at the tail end, usually those in their 50s plus is when I see them really prioritize health. Because by that time, they have the wealth.
Right.
And their kids, if they have kids, are usually older. Like once you hit the teenage years, you're not their favorite person anymore. It's their friends.
Yeah.
So then they, you see them get into a lot of, either CrossFit or swimming or triathlons, something, maybe another mountain to overcome.
Right. Because that's just the drive,
Yeah,
right? Like, it's just that feeling of climbing up a mountain, reaching the top, and it also subsides very, very quickly. So you're looking to the next mountain and the next mountain,
yeah,
and you just want, you definitely just want a challenge because most of the people like just feel more engaged and more fulfilled in that way. Like they get up and they have a task at hand to do, and
yeah.
you know,
Okay, so I will say, okay,
yeah.
good.
No, it might not be relevant to other people. Like other people might look at it like, yeah, you could say that task is not important at all. Like, why are they trying to climb this mountain? But it doesn't matter, It's just,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because I will say there are three archetypes that I've seen at the tail end. The ones that where it is never enough, so they just keep going for more and more because it probably just drives them, right? I've done a lot of research on this personally, and it's either just extreme intrinsic motivation, which is probably the best and most positive, but very rare, or it's this, I need to validate myself externally.
Right.
And that is seen as negative on the surface, but it's also a very powerful driver for some top performers. So bucket one is like the ones where it's never enough. There are a few, very few, I could probably count two off the top of my head that I know well, where they've made it and then they just left, and they're okay with it. They just rode off into the sunset. They don't need to be famous. They don't need people to know who they are, and they're just good. Right. And then the third bucket, and I think the third bucket is probably the best, and this is where Ethan falls under, so that's why we get along really well, is you find a second act that is more meaningful to your life and has still a very big positive impact. So in Ethan, let's just call his first act was his career largely with Amazon. And then his second act is his mission to pay it forward to help others with career success and satisfaction. Right. That is what really drives Level Up for Ethan. And then now, and you could dovetail into all those things, but it's like living something bigger than yourself.
Got it. Yeah. And I think it's going to come to that. I think, and then before we get into, I think some of the questions I had about just like, reaching out to people. And I think I definitely want to hear the story of how you and Ethan like interacted first and how did that work out after that. How's the move to Hawaii? Like, is that also, because I see some like very exceptional people I've seen in life, they would move to places like Switzerland or in Europe and, they would be still doing the stuff they're doing, but they'll be physically disconnected from that chaos. And that helps them operate at a different level. I'm curious, like for you, was it very similar to move to Hawaii? I mean, it's amazing that you're in Hawaii. Was that something? Mm-hmm.
There's chaos everywhere. So if you seek it, you could find it. Trust me. There's chaos everywhere. The move to Hawaii was interesting because I remember talking to Ethan about it. Like, how do we do it? Pros and cons. And then his advice was good because he was like, read the book Decisive by Chip and Dan Heath. And I love that book because it just teaches you how to make decisions in life. Right. And there are a few questions or things to think about that helped me make this decision. Number one, is it a one or two-way door? That's the easy one, right? The Jeff Bezos one. Moving to Hawaii is a two-way door because if you don't like it, you just come back. Number two, what would you advise your best friend? Always ask yourself that question because we give better advice to our friends and other people than ourselves. Namely because number one, we remove ourselves from the emotional piece. Right. And then number two, you just hit straight to the root cause. And when you peel it back, you're like, it's not that big of a deal. It ties into the two-way door. And then, but certainly with a move like this, there are downsides, further away from family, blah, 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 having to figure out a new community in school, all that stuff. But you got to work backwards from what would you not regret in life. And then I really like I like the exercise of thinking of your life in seasons, and seasons is defined as decades. I wish I knew this when I was in high school or 20 years old, because the earlier you know this, the better. If you could think of your life as in 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and then 60s, 70s, and you just write, it could be as simple as 3 things in each decade, what you must do. This is not a bucket list. Because most bucket lists are like, hey, I will do this before I die, right? Yeah. This is, you have to be intentional and do this in your 20s because it's so physically demanding that you're not going to do it in your 50s. Or a great example, I didn't do this, but backpacking through Europe on a cheap budget with like 2 friends. Right. I'll tell you, in this time of my life, I'm not doing that. Like with my wife and daughter, right. It's not happening, right? We travel differently now. Yeah. So be intentional about it. I got that from the book Die with Zero. That was the biggest takeaway from Die with Zero. The other thing is stacking memory dividends. One of my favorite quotes is the business of life is the acquisition of memories. So if you work back from that, your whole goal then is to make macro and micro memories that are important and sticky. And then the second layer is if you understand that memories compound, then you want to do certain things throughout your life because they're going to hit you differently, right? Like some people might say, I'm going to visit Paris once in my life after I retire. Okay, yeah, but going to Paris in your 20s and 30s or 40s is very different.
Right.
It kind of reminded me when I was at Amazon, I hosted some fishbowl chats with authors.
Mhm.
And one of them was Ryan Holiday. We had 2 chats. And he told me that he reread certain books, classics that he found very helpful at different times of his life.
Right.
Um, and one of the books, I'm forgetting the name now, but it was he read it before kids and after he had kids.
Right.
Completely different book in perspective. So yeah, to
Yeah,
do all
I have
those.
I have an example for that. Like it was recently I was visiting my nieces in San Francisco, and they put on the Wonka movie, the new Timothy one.
Mm.
And in the last scene, his mother comes back and gives him a chocolate, and I'm just sitting there and I'm crying. Like there's like big, big tears in my eyes, and my cousins, they're like 5 and 7 and 10 years old. They're just looking at me. They're like, "What's wrong with you, dude?" And because they look at me like this guy who works for Amazon, works out a lot, is like very serious, and I'm just crying. And I'm like, I don't know, because my mom passed away a few years ago, and that just hit so core to me. And so true that if I had seen that movie any other point of time, I would have just been like, oh, good movie, or whatever, good songs in the movie. But that scene just like completely, surprised me. And as you said, like, it's just in what season and what hits you. Same for music, same for movies. Like if you just watch them at a different point of time, you'd be like, wow, like, and sometimes you would find something very, like, for example, Into the Wild is something I really loved growing up, the movie, about this traveler, who just gives up society and starts traveling in the wild.
Oh.
And now I see it was a big influence when I was growing up. But now when I see it, I'm like, yeah, this was a guy who didn't care.
Yeah.
Like he didn't care about his family, and now that is offending me. So it's just this is like, I think, so beautiful about art and books and stuff, is they just draw emotions out of you, and if they do not, then I think it's not good art, bad or good emotion. So yeah, that's so true what you said. And
For me, the big takeaway here, I'll just share was
Yeah.
reread classic timeless books that have stood the test of times. And then the other piece, I put this into practice in the past year, but it works really well, is in regards to the information content diet, I'm on the 2 extreme bell curves. Right now in my life, I either only consume the classic timeless books or articles that are really good, or the right now, real time, this is smart, I need to just pay attention. But everything in the middle, just cut. So reread the classics that have shaped your life at different points. And then the other part is, when it comes to information content diet, what's worked for me is an extreme bell curve. Only rereading the core classics, the books, the articles that have stood the test of times. And then at the other end is the real time, right now, just current smart things.
Mhm.
Cut everything else in the middle, because you don't have time for that. And just pay attention to those 2. Now, you can get overloaded with the real current now because there's a lot of it. But that's where I focus on, like, certain people that I think are super smart, etc. Yeah.
Got it. Makes sense. And I think coming back to the earlier point of networking, I think that's something I want to understand from you on, like maybe taking Ethan's conversation is an example, or something else as an example, like just the power of reaching out and cold DMing people. And, cold DMing not in the terms of like, I'm going to here sell you something, but in the sense of either appreciating, elevating others, or, like saying that, oh, we could work together. Like, I'm just wondering, how has that been for you? Because for me, I certainly feel that with some people in my network, I have so much respect for them. I'm like, if you ever need help, if you ever need me to help you with something, just let me know. Like, there's like no doors for you. So basically, like, because I have so much conviction of what they can achieve, that I would just, ride along with them, whatever they want to achieve in life. I'm wondering, like, how has the like networking been for you, and what is the meaning? Like, is that true? Like, you are very good at reaching out to people and cold DMing. Is that something you need for angel investing and things like that?
I think so. The most important thing when it comes to networking, etc., is just being someone who provides value. That's the most important. And like look at like you and your podcast are a great example, right? Because instead of think about this, the 90% of people who reach out to, let's use Ethan as an example, will say, "Can I get your advice, Ethan? Can we have a coffee chat?" First of all, "Can I get your advice?" is so one way, and coffee chat, he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. So it's a very big risk. So ignored, right? And then the next 9% will say, "Hey, Ethan, I have this newsletter or a podcast. It would be great for you to be a guest or speaker. I can reach this many people." So it's a exchangeable value. And then 1%, sometimes people will say, "Hey, Ethan, I know this is a problem that you've talked about that you want to solve. I've solved it for you. Here you go." So, a great example of the 1% bucket is Alan, who built Ethan GPT. He just built it. All the painstaking back work, aggregation of information, blah, blah. He just built it and said, "Here you go." And Ethan and I looked into it and were like, "Oh, wow, this is great." And then we started to get to know him better, blah, blah, blah. We started to do things. Another good example is Nishant Jain. So Alan O'Byrne, former Amazon. Now he's at a big company. I think, I don't want to get the name wrong, but you can find him on LinkedIn. But he basically built Ethan GPT. And then Nishant.
Him and I worked in the same org.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So he was like the Gen AI innovator, like in the org, and he was always like encouraging people to use Gen AI. And I did not know that. That's so cool.
I'll send you the link afterwards, where you can see it, where we spotlight him. But yeah, he's the one who did it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he did a great job. And now now it's a different conversation. See, the conversation shifted from, it evolved from outreach to now he's a collaborator. And then after collaborator is, can you be a deeper partner? And throughout that whole time, you could evolve into like a friend, common interests alike and personalities, blah, blah, blah. Same thing with Nishant Jain at Apple. He's a level up member. He took one of our courses, and then he co-hosted the Fremont, California in-person meetup with Ethan. And he handled everything, the venue, the agenda, the food, everything, blah, blah, made it easy for Ethan. And then he surprised Ethan by doing stand-up comedy. And Ethan likes boldness and ownership and results. So if you combine all three, now it's okay. Now we've been collaborating with Nishant a lot. We've brought him in as a guest speaker to many of our events or talks. And then now we're on the discussion level of, can we do something bigger together? That's how you build it, right? And both of these people, they all had great credibility and track records already. But that's the key with networking. The other key with networking is having other credible people vouch for you. Be your champion. That's like, your manager or your manager's peers vouching for you. That's a big one. The other thing with networking, okay, for those people who don't want to do networking per se and outreach problem to people, blah, 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 the best thing for you then is go to a high growth company or industry, because it's just going to grow with or without you, and your network will bloom from that. Yeah, as long as they like you and they can say good things about you, right? Because the opposite could happen. They could be like, "Yeah, we grew, but this person, don't hire him. They were horrible." Yeah. Yeah, because think about it. Careers in decades. So if you think in 10, 20 years, a lot of your peers will be leaders and executives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is like even I had some of the conversations with some of my friends I came from Delhi, and it was one of the best colleges in Delhi, but we were always like struggling with everything, like back in uni days. You didn't have money. Yeah. You didn't get a job. Like you would get the most terrible internships. everybody struggled, but I think now it's been 10 years. So it's a great milestone personally for me to start the podcast, because it's after 10 years I'm speaking to these guys, and they've done like such crazy stuff, like, in their past. And I'm like, wow, like they're on a, rocket ship for sure. So it is in my interest to be like in touch with them, to know what they're doing and offer them any support they need, because they're going to grow. So one of my friends is a rapper in Delhi. Very weird connection. He's one of the most famous rappers in India. And I take it as a personal goal to like coach him. Like it's a very strong relationship that I have with him. He's a childhood friend of mine. But to me, it's like inevitable. Like what I'm doing is just so small percentage of, helping him out, because he's gonna grow so big that it's in my interest to give him the best advice, because he's going to grow no matter what. So it's just like, you want to be associated with people who are high achievers. That's something that, I've always looked up to. And that has blossomed our friendship. Like we are closer friends than how we were in childhood, because we're actually having a joint mission of making him like kind of the best artist in India. So
that's an amazing example.
so true. Like I think we are more on calls now than ever before, and I've known him for 25 years, and we've been good friends. But like if you're not in a joint mission, then a catch up is always like, "What's up? What have you been doing?" Just like small talk, and and then you end the conversation. So I think I disagree with people who say that you should not run business with families and friends. I think that is the ultimate. Like I feel that you can achieve success. You can be, very well respected in the circles that you want to be respected, but it's still very lonely, because whom do you share that with? But if you do it with if you're able to pull that off with your family and friends, I don't think anything tops that, because, like, if your brothers and friends were involved in that whole journey and they get to, also get the benefits, then I think it's just, to me, it's just a way, a much greater way of like, achieving success. So is that also like something that you did with Ethan Evans? Like, is that, talk to me about your interaction with him. And I'm personally looking to learn here. So I'm trying to see how other people would approach a problem. For example, through this podcasting, I'm been doing a lot of outreach. There's some people I absolutely am a fan with. They could get on a podcast or not, but I definitely want to assist them, going forward. How was your conversation or pitching to Ethan, like, and starting with level, a level up? How was that whole interaction?
Yeah, it's a fun story. So Ethan and I, we basically built our partnership and relationship on LinkedIn and the internet after he retired from Amazon. So the long story short is he started posting on LinkedIn, and then I noticed it, so I just started commenting back. And the key is to comment with some insightful or unique things, because after 30 or 60 or so comments, he's a smart person, right? He's going to remember the name. And then after that, he's going to start to expect it. So that was the first step. Then Ethan said, I'm going to create my first course, Breaking Through to Executive. Can I have volunteers to give me feedback on the course? And I think over 300 people must have raised their hands. And then he said, great, meet me on Zoom at 9 a.m. on a Saturday or Sunday. So then those 300 people probably went down to like 70, right? And then, being an intense executive, he's like, well, I want to do 3 or 4 more rounds of iteration to really finesse it. So that 70 people riddles down to 50, then 30. And then, at this whole time, you're giving feedback. So because we have this shared Amazon operational history, I know what good looks like. So you have to let's assume 50% of the people gave him low bar feedback. So now it's like you're competing with 15 people. And then I'll always remember this. We were on a huge family vacation for one of my aunt's birthday. There was like over 30 of us. We were all in Turks and Caicos on the beach. It was the finals of the World Cup, Argentina versus France. Everyone on the island is watching. And I like the French team, the national team. And then I get this ping on my phone and it says 15 minutes meeting with Ethan Evans. I was like, oh, they're about to go into extra time. right?
Yeah.
So
It was
it's
the
like,
penalties, yeah.
yeah, as a penalty. And I was like, do I leave or do I ghost him or do I go? I said, okay. I gave him my word. I'm going to show up. So I show up. There's about 7 people on this Zoom call. 2 of them were definitely watching the World Cup. So it's really only 5 of us. And then, that was it. And then I gave him really good feedback. So we connected. So through the emails, now I'm giving him good feedback and we're communicating. Our family was in Cincinnati at the time, because that's where my wife's parents are and they're retired. So we were with them for a little while, and just so happens Ethan's hometown is Oxford, Ohio, which is like 45 minutes away. And he was visiting his family there. And I was like, I'm in Cincinnati. You're going to fly out of CVG airport, most likely. He's like, yeah, I am. Do you want to meet up before? So we met up for about 2 hours prior to his departure at a local library in Cincinnati that I chose. And we just hit it off. Now, here's the thing. So we had the history and the track record and the trust built. And then I told him, for this meeting, I'm going to come to you with the quintessential 2-pager vision document on what I think this can be. Newsletter, courses, this is how we would scale it. And then I told him I would do 90% of the work. This is what I need from you. I will do this. Cool. And look, everything could just be rev share. So if we don't make anything, nothing happens. But then we use that meeting to get to know each other well. So how do we work well? I think number 1, we're mission aligned. Number 2, we operate the same way. Ownership, bias for action, blah, blah. And third, this is really important. I learned this from Naval Ravikant. There's books. When you look for a business partner or any partner, always look for 3 things: high intelligence, high energy, high integrity, and never compromise on any of them. And after getting to know Ethan, he's super smart. He has great positive sum energy, and he trusts people, and he's very high integrity, and he thinks long term. So that's how we grew. And then, so come to networking. We launched our on-demand courses. Then we launched Substack. And I knew I had experience with Substack with other creator friends at the time, so I launched it easily. And then we're thinking, how do we scale the courses? At that time, I was mentoring at First Round Capital, and they had an online portal for the entire network. And I noticed there's this company called Maven, and one of the founding engineers was on it. And I was like, what's Maven? It sounds like an online course platform. Can we use you? And he was like, yeah, you could use us. Here's the whole thing. I'll connect you. Here's onboarding. And Maven is a huge part of our business now. They're one of our best partners. So that's how we were able to scale. And then it just, Ethan and I have weekly calls every Wednesday. I own the agenda. It's basically a one-on-one. And we talk about what we like, what we're doing, and the vision of the business. But we both, no matter what, drive action on the business. We pretty much co-own every aspect. Content, marketing, blah, 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 all that stuff. That's why it works out well. But it started with
Jason. Did you feel that, like, when you were initially, not just when you were commenting, you were trying to be more responsible? Because did you have a sense of this is how it could blossom out?
Well, I didn't know him at the time well, but I knew his history. I knew that he was an executive known for delivering results, and then his content, which was very straight truth, candid, speaking on advice, I liked a lot. Because for many reasons, legal, HR being some of them, a lot of executives who are currently in their role, they don't speak the truth.
Right.
But Ethan is retired, so he can say whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And he's bold. So we got along well. But no, definitely there was hey, let's get to know each other before we're too dependent on each other for this business.
Right.
And now we're good friends. Yeah, like when he comes to Honolulu, he stays with me and vice versa, and blah, blah, blah. I would say Ethan is an excellent business partner, life teacher, but also just good friend.
Yeah. No,
You want
definitely.
yeah.
It sounds like that, like the way he interacted, and just those interactions were just like, even this asking him to go on the podcast. It was just, I could genuinely sense that the paying forward, that's something he really believes in. And that's what he's working, backwards from. I mean, we spoke a lot about money and wealth with Ethan as well. And he's like, yeah, when I was VP, I just said that I have enough. I would like to do something else, and just picked up my bag and, started doing something else. Talk to me this, I think the last section of the conversation about content creation. I think you,
Mm.
um, I see, like, this is for me new. So I've been starting the podcast like a couple of months ago and posting on LinkedIn. And I understand there's like the whole aspect of content creation, which is like for Ethan, for example, at 50, he switched careers and like he's a content creator now, more or less, right? Which
Yep.
is amazing to do that at 50 plus age. And for you also, it was a shift to get into like core, like that's core business, right? The core business of Level Up is content creation. How it has been for you to create content, and could you talk to me about some of the processes that you and Ethan use to, because I sometimes myself, I'm thinking like, I'm just one person. How much do I have to share?
Mm.
Like, how much insights do I have to share versus you could do like, on other social media, you have the daily vlogs, like, this is what I eat, this is how I sleep, this is what I drive. And that also gets boring because you're the same person. I'm just thinking like, what's the mental framework, how you break down problems when you're creating content? Especially, I understood also prior to this conversation that you're, kind of running the whole ship behind the scenes. And I think Ethan gives you the 10-15% inputs, and you're taking that forward and making into like like 100,000 plus newsletters, like the 100,000 plus newsletter readers, and the website and the programs and then the LinkedIn posts. Is this a lot of work, and is this the two of you? So I'm trying to understand like what is the process looking like, and I'm also coming to the point that is like content creation almost becoming inevitable to people if they want to be stood out to what they do, because I see more and more people say on LinkedIn something like, when you put in your name publicly, and Nawal Ravikant says the same thing, is like when you put your name out publicly, there's a lot at stake. So, and that signals strength. That signals that, yeah, I'm, happy to take all the blame. If something goes bad, it's me. I have my face, like my identity is tied to this. So, is that kind of becoming a new, or maybe it is already, and I just see it now, that is just a core skill?
In my opinion, having a direct line of communication to whoever your customer is will be table stakes. Because number one, the realm of authenticity, especially in the age of AI, is more important than ever. So customers, especially discerning customers, they want to know it's coming from you. Number two is you don't want to rely on the distribution channels or algorithms of anyone else because they can misinterpret or misspeak. So it's better for you to control the narrative. I think some of the strongest companies are understanding that, and they're seeing comms PR as a profit center to their business and not just a marketing line item cost. It's almost like, how for a while is software eating the world. I think in that it's, you need to own your narrative because the simple question is, why would you want to depend on anyone else? So that's why it's important. And people want it. The other thing too is, in this age of AI, I do believe the human interaction and community aspect will explode because people want that. And the networking ties are going to be even more important because if we fast forward 5 years from now, it's not going to be a shock if AI is able to just auto apply you for every job out there. So if you assume it could do that for everyone, well, then you don't stand out. The only way you're going to stand out, especially for those coveted jobs, is probably through a warm referral, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's important. For us, we constantly talk about content creation. It's tough. The key is high value, differentiating, and consistent. Now, the pillars that we look at that we believe people want is people always love how I did XYZ personal stories.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are ungoogleable or you cannot get in ChatGPT because they were your own personal experiences. They weren't written about, but you have actionable lessons from them. And the key to that, what we've learned, is people really resonate with lessons of failure that then lead to a clear lesson or success. more so than always being successful, because everyone can relate to failure, right? You haven't really lived a life if you haven't failed. It's almost impossible. So they want to feel it, and that also humanizes you. That's why, actually, if you look at some of Ethan's top LinkedIn posts, I think top 3 out of the 4 that went the most viral, it was all about the times he failed. The time he failed Jeff Bezos at all hands demo, or the time that the App Store public launch debacle or failure with Jeff, right? Things like that. So how I did personal stories tied with clear, actionable lessons, commenting on real-time news, but with a different point of view. So, for example, when remember when Sam Altman was temporarily fired from OpenAI? Ethan and I were talking. I said, I was telling Ethan, your position on this is what is happening behind the scenes on the board of directors level. How does that happen? What does that discussion look like? Because you've been there before, so provide that purview. Because 1, it's rare. Number 2, people want to know about it, but it's rarely spoken about. And 3, everyone else is going to make comments about the other stuff. So you're not going to stand out. So find your own positioning. The third is make it a very clear pain point for the people. And the good way to figure out then people ask, what are the pain points? It's what are the most common questions your audience and readers are asking you? Right? So like, for example, for us, it could be, hey, how do I manage up better to a very intense micromanaging manager? Or how do I win executive sponsorship from this VP who is my skip's boss? Or I don't have a great, or here's a tough one. I'm second in line in the favorite list of my managers. How do I get to number 1? Because there's only one promo. And I think I know who's going to get it, right? Like all those kinds of things. So then you work backwards from that and you can build content there. Those are the 3 big pillars. The other stuff, especially with you in podcasts, is sometimes behind the scenes contents is fun, right? Like, how did you get this guest on? How did you reach out to Ethan? People probably want to know, right? Things like that. Those kinds of learnings. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And like, how do you feel about the process like that you've created with Ethan? Is that something that is like evolved a lot with the AI, or just generally like your process of it all? Because I still am surprised with the amount of content that goes out just from 2 people. And so is that also like, am I thinking it right? Like this is like a full time that you spend on this, or is this like something that you have been able to automate a lot of it, especially the posting and things like that? I'm just curious, like if you can share on how that, because in Amazon, right, we want to keep dealing with the next problem. We don't want to solve problems of yesterday, and that is like, is there certain aspects that you could share that could help others, and like especially play this game right, more or less. These were already great points that I got from you.
So, okay. So in terms of tool set, it's interesting with us. We use tools like Buffer and LinkedIn scheduling to help pre-schedule our posts. Like that's very low value stuff, right? Scheduling, easy. We actually write a lot of we write all of our content. So I don't know, it's like when I say that, it's like good and bad, because it takes time. So for me, I sit down every Friday afternoon. It's on my calendar, like a 2-hour block, and I just write the next week's content. Ethan, when he sits down and it strikes him, he has, in our Buffer, I think we have 347 drafts of topics. And some of them are fully fleshed out, like long form, 1,000+ words, and others are a headline that says write about this topic. So sometimes it's a little bit ad hoc when inspiration strikes. So we're not the best in terms of if you want pure play automated efficiency to write the content for you, but I think this method works because the act of writing, and going back to Amazon, is just it helps clear and sharpen our thinking. So us doing that works well. Sometimes we will sit down and say, okay, for the upcoming next 2 weeks or month, are there certain topics we want to hit on? maybe because of seasonality or because of timeliness in the news.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like there was a time where there were a lot of layoffs and reorgs, so people were asking Ethan a lot of that. And we said, look, Ethan, do a talk about, he came up with this great idea, how reorgs are the new promotions.
Right.
So that one just hit. And, okay, so
Yeah.
that's the content creation process. The other way is, the word we love is leverage, because you could turn a singular content piece into many different types of content, right? So for example, if Ethan does a 30-minute Maven Lightning lesson talk about reorgs is the new promotion, you could take that video content and then turn it into one LinkedIn post, or maybe two, depending on what's there, right? So then you have LinkedIn covered. You could turn that into a tweet. You could turn that into a Substack note. And then I can take that video and distill it into a newsletter article with like the top 5 lessons. Because readers will tell us, some readers have told us, look, I love your guys' content, but I cannot watch a 45-minute podcast.
Yeah.
Like I have 2 kids, I'm too busy. But then they'll say, but I love those 3 action takeaways that you wrote.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's why we write them.
I'll tell you, it was just yesterday, like less than 24 hours ago, I posted a podcast, which is like about 1.5 hours. And then for my family, I wrote like 3 bullet points. And my dad still called me and he's like, can you give me a summary?
Yeah, there you go.
I was like, I have 2 words for you. Go watch.
Yeah, so that's and we get it. Like, people consume content differently. So the question is, what works best for you? Like, Ethan loves writing. Ethan's very good at 2 things. Ethan loves writing. He's very good on video and talking, but he doesn't like the whole production that requires a video and the scheduling. So that's why if you could leverage his content, then you could do it well. The other thing is, taking past content that worked well and resonated and then updating it to the current times.
Right.
Because especially if you're trying to grow an audience, someone told us this and it just resonated. She basically said, look, is your name Oprah or is your name Tim Ferriss? And the answer is no. So then people don't know who you are. So sometimes you just have to remind them of your credibility and background, but also of all the good content you've written in the past. Because I can guarantee you 100% of your audience has not read every LinkedIn post. Right. And some things just strike a timely chord and you can update it, right? So we do a lot of that. We do have an editor. His name's Daniel. He's written a guest newsletter article about his LinkedIn process, which is very good. He sharpens our writing. So we'll write the drafts and we'll say, hey, Daniel, make sure we're not like silly or like, grammatical errors. And then he'll sharpen it. And then he's also great at helping turn insights from videos into also takeaways. It gives another lens, right? Because he provides a different perspective at all. So that's our process. But it's not like, there are definitely some creators who have a system. We have like a semi-system that's loose and flexible. We're very much a lifestyle.
But also nimble,
business.
right? Like very nimble.
Yeah.
Like I think you kind of rely on the news and all that. Like you want it to be nimble because otherwise your process will break every time you try to introduce a new way of doing it.
Exactly.
This has been pretty cool. Is there something exciting next, Jason? Just final notes before we close the podcast.
Let's see. We did launch a new course recently. It's called, it's about executive presence. So again, paying attention to what the customers want. Everyone asks about that question. And it's, in this age of AI, in-person or virtual presence and confidence and being able to command a room is very important. So we've built that course. That one's exciting. What's interesting about that course is all the live sessions are all practice. Like practice with real-time scenarios, answer it, and then Ethan will reframe it on how you could do better. And also peer practicing, group practicing. The fun thing about this topic is we've also bring in interesting guests with different perspectives, like quiet leadership for introverts, or the power of humor, or this next upcoming cohort in February is on emotional EQ, emotional skills, and the power of that. And then I'll probably bring in more guests on different lenses. That one's fun. Other stuff coming up, I would say that's the big one. Yeah.
Awesome.
We might have some other stuff cooking, but we'll see. Well, there's so many ideas. You have to focus on execute, right?
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, Jason, and where can people hit you up?
Yeah. The two best places is LinkedIn, Jason Yoong. Just connect with me there. And the second one is Level Up Newsletter. That's our newsletter. You can subscribe for free. You'll get weekly career advice. Oh, and here's the other thing. So we talk about mission and fun things. I love speaking to students, high school and college students.
Right.
I do a lot of speaking at my alma mater, USC. It's usually about early career advice, how to maximize an internship to turn into a full-time role, or sometimes. But it's the question, why do I like it? 'Cause sometimes you'll get very thoughtful, unusual questions from college students.
Yeah.
Sometimes about life, about how to plan things. The biggest thing in a career that Ethan and I talk about for early career is just be really bold.
Right.
Be comfortable doing things without anyone's permission. Just do it. Just ship it. Speak up. Share your opinion. Now, you do it artfully and thoughtfully, but taking big, bold career risks, especially early on. Go to that exciting new company. If you're in a domain that has a hotbed or is known as like the HQ or renaissance of that domain, go there and just immerse yourself.
Right.
It becomes much harder when you're older.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I completely resonate with that. And I think for me as well, like it was just those early experiences, like just shaped the core personality. And I don't think people should be optimizing for domains. Like I just get, I actually have, I get annoyed when somebody is like, who's 22-year-old and like, oh, I would lose my experience in the domain. And like, I haven't seen at Amazon like a domain knowledge. We actually value people who are from different domains because that's where the insights and the cloning ideas and things, so much compounding happens outside your domain. And, because within the domain, it's just a matter of experience and like how many years do you spend. But this was a cool conversation, Jason. I think I just wanted to I will try to give a quick summary of the conversation we had today. So we spoke about some of the, core skills that you definitely prioritize. Like you said, relentlessly resourceful, being a change agent. So essentially like just not needing a permission and shipping and doing stuff and getting feedback and improving in every part that you do as a career very early on. The earlier you do it, the better it is. We talked about in exec development, like how do you, earlier stage in your career, like how do you be an exec magnet? Like your exec look up to you. You're not seeking their visibility for something you don't provide value. And then elevating others. That was one important topic we talked about, is like how do you elevate at different levels? How do you elevate others? And, how do you become a person that is able to show others in good light? And that is going to be very important. And then we spoke about the networking effect, like how do you network? And I think one of the main things was you have to bring something to the conversation, be a solver for people. Like people love getting helped, and just solve it for them. Again, coming back to the first point, and then being a collaborator. That's the maximum benefit you can get out of people, especially the people that you look up to, people with high energy, intensity, and integrity. Finally, we did speak a lot about Ethan Evans, like how the interactions have been with him, how him as a leader has, shaped a lot of the, beliefs, and even like he's just added more value to a lot of people, and same for you. But in the end, we spoke about content creation and like what are the processes that you've used, and kind of the learnings that you had on the LinkedIn share, such as like, you're sharing about failures and then converting them into success, sharing about current news, and, definitely thinking about your customers' pain points. And those are the most relatable, content pieces. And that just, keeps on churning out more and more content that is useful to people and has, I think you should mention high value, consistent, and differentiating from others on what are they posting. Do you want to add something from this?
That was a great summary. That was great. So one other tidbit is I think people don't grasp this until later on in their career. Is this ties into the elevating of others? Whenever you have a win at work, that's a deliverable that worked well, one of the things the executive is always thinking about is how can we scale this win to others in the org or wider company?
Right.
So if you could be the one who proactively provides a vision plan or forward thinking memo about how to do that, guess what? When they give the green light and they want someone to lead it, it's going to be you.
Right.
That's how you scale and elevate yourself quickly. You talk about like leapfrogging, right? That's how you do it, because that's how big leaders are always thinking. Oh, it worked for this org. Let's scale it to these three.
Right.
Then let's scale it to the rest, right? So have that mental model and apply that to everything. The other thing I will say is businesses are so much more creative than people think. And what I mean by that is there are so many. Okay, Ethan and I never planned on being content creators. It just so happened we were building this, and then all of a sudden people were asking, "What are you guys?" I'm like, I guess we're content creators. Like, I don't know, right? So sometimes it just falls into it. But there's many different ways to provide value to people. There's many different ways to grow a business and generate revenue, and some things that people I see mistake a lot is they'll think of an industry or role and they'll be too pigeonholed on it. So easy example is being an NBA basketball player. Some people are like, yeah, I wanted to be an NBA basketball player. I can't make it. But they love basketball. Do you know how wide that net is?
Right.
There's a team, there are GMs, there's analysts, there's commentators, everything.
Right.
You can be part of that if you want to, and you don't have to play it all. You can be, like the Moneyball, right? You can use data to look how much data and sports are intertwined.
Yeah.
Incredible. Or you could be on the deal making side of it, right? You talk about anti-AI, live sports is going to explode because that's what people gravitate towards. So the question is, what kind of sponsorship deals or deal making revenue can you do? Like the sponsors on the jerseys, so smart.
Right.
Here's an example I love. For baseball, and I just learned this, anytime a player makes their MLB debut, they wear a special patch on their jersey that says MLB debut.
Uh-huh.
And then that singular patch is then made into a card, a sports card, one of one signed.
Right.
And it's become one of the most coveted sports cards in it, should that player becomes huge.
Right.
And guess what's so funny? Who do you think wants what cohort do you think wants that card the most?
That card, I mean, the kids.
The players themselves.
Yeah.
So some of these players will write on the back of the card, hey, if you find this, can you call this number? Or there's so many videos where their family members or wives would have bought it for them.
Right.
Because it's a one-on-one, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that you could be so creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jason. This was a really good conversation, and I love to stay in touch and, enjoy Hawaii. Your background looks so good. I'm just gonna think about the ocean a lot now.
Well, if you ever come to Honolulu, hit me up and we'll hang out. You did a great job because I thought your questions were fun. I felt like it was more of a conversation, although I think I did too much talking. Keep up your podcast, and I think keep it going, because look, if anyone's just listening, look at what Nikhil is building. You're not only building a distribution channel for yourself and your brand, but you're simultaneously learning from other people, building relationships with people like Ethan, but also developing skills like speaking. Your summary was fantastic. You basically took 2 hours into one. You are refining and sharpening your skills of moderating,
Right.
executive presence, commanding the room, poise, and then all that stuff. So you compound out. It's going to be big.
No, I think for me, the podcast is just an open invitation to anybody to look into things that I'm interested in. I'm learning from this. And as long as, I think my main agenda behind every podcast is, as long as the guest feels that this was a good conversation, because I don't want them to go away thinking that, oh, I'm just gonna say who am I, what I did, the 10 things I've repeated in the past. That's something that is something that I, is my success metric. Basically, like if you're only thing you're thinking is like, oh, that was such a long conversation, and I could have, you've had like 5-7 podcasts in the past, and what's the point of adding it? What's the differentiating factor? And for me, like I just thought that these things were valuable to me, for me to learn from you.
Exactly.
And if it helps anybody else, that's a bonus. But if it's like a good conversation between me and you, that's the main goal. So I'm so glad that it.
Well, look at this too. Let's say your podcast, let's say it doesn't explode or anything, or it doesn't become a business. But look at the skills you've built, because now with your rapper friend in India, those skills are completely transferable, because you could say, yeah, I've done this before. We could turn you into a podcast. I can handle all the back end. I know all the technology. I know how to distribute.
Exactly.
And he's like, yeah, because he could just rap. I will say, so you're from Delhi. My wife and I visited Delhi once. We loved it. We went for a friend's wedding. We're friends with both the bride and the groom. The groom from Delhi, bride from Chandigarh. This was pre-COVID, but it was so much fun. We have to go back. Yeah.
Yeah, Delhi weddings are just massive. That's 500 people. That is just
minimum.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this was fun. Let us know how we can help you. The biggest thing that we could do is help with just help get the word out. Because here's the thing, you have valuable content, you have good relevant career advice lessons. So you got to distill it into those 7 lessons. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jason. It was great catching up with you, man. Take care, and I wish you the best.
Yeah. All right.
Take care.
Thanks, Nikhil.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's conversation with Jason. I definitely picked up so many insights from this conversation about, just doing things without permission, actually just delivering on stuff. Also at the same time, how do you network with the big guys, the really big, fish in the sea? Like, how do you reach out to them and figure out a way to collaborate with them, partner with them, so you can deliver value together? That's where you really learn. When you work with people who have high integrity, high energy, and high intelligence, that's the real gain. When you get to live with them, to work with them through osmosis, you're unstoppable after that. So thank you so much for listening to this conversation. And if this content is helpful to you, please do click subscribe and share. And let me know what I can do better next time. Also, let me know if there's any guests that you would definitely want on the show. Thank you. Until next time.